In 1993, an unloved and very short-lived ride at an up-and-coming theme park. Fifth Dimension at Chessington closed its doors seemingly out of nowhere. However, this would pave way for a brand new facelift to this very short-lived ride, creating a cult following of loyal fans even to this day almost 30 years later. This is the history of Terror Tomb at Chessington World of Adventures. Before we go too in-depth into the history of the tomb rides, as I shall call them, I feel a short foreword about the Fifth Dimension is needed to get you up to speed. In late 1978, Chessington had recently become under new ownership of Two Swords, and they were very keen to quickly expand on the zoo and fun fair that they had recently acquired to attract guests to the small park near Surrey. And by 1987 they had done just that. Two Swords had achieved this with the help of the legendary John Wardley, who had conjured up a detailed plan of what he felt the park needed to grow in the young industry of UK theme parks, including the plans by adding themed areas to separate each sections of the park, and also adding rides that had very basic ride hardware with the addition of theming to make them slightly different to similar rides you see at amusement parks or fun fairs. In July 1987, Chessington opened with its new guise as a theme park alongside the zoo, with several rides opening, including Dragon River Water Ride, Runaway Mine Train roller coaster, Safari Skyway monorail, Smuggler's Galley and Swinging Ship, and of course the Fifth Dimension Dart Ride, all of which were built by German manufacturer Mack Rides. Fifth Dimension was innovative for the UK. The ride hardware itself was nothing particularly revolutionary, with the basic transit system being employed. However, the rotation of the ride vehicles and the sequencing was said to be quite a technological task at the time, with computers only just reaching homes of the wealthy at that time. Fifth Dimension was a very short-lived ride in the park due to one main factor.
Where have you been?
Which was its bad reception on opening, with a rather deep storyline which most of the public found it hard to grasp and get into.
As I told you, I am Zapomatic, and I was sent in here to repair this TV. But would you believe it? There's a Gorg in here! Horrible creatures. Gorgs. Horrible!
And as we know, you can have the best sets and the best ride system, but if the story and the storytelling itself isn't up to scratch, it lets the entire experience down.
Well, I've made the gun so there's nothing to be afraid of.
How did you get it?
Because of this issue, Fifth Dimension promptly got a change of storyline to make it a bit easier to follow, and after that it was fairly forgotten about, and word would spread that the 1993 season would be its last at the park. With the issues of the storyline being bodged, and the negative reviews never turning around the ride's trajectory, it was time to renovate the ride.
Oh no! The mine is collapsing! The whole place is falling down! Quickly, follow me to safety!
Due to the park being still relatively new, building an entirely new ride system and theme was out of the question due to budget, and besides, they had a perfectly fine ride system in place which had given them little to no issues since opening. So of course, the natural progression was to retheme the ride entirely and be able to market it as a new attraction, allowing them to keep the budget relatively low while having the marketing push of a brand new attraction on their side. After getting back into the creative studio with John Wardley, accompanied by Farmer Studios of Leicester and the renowned Spark Studios, they very promptly came up with an entirely new theme that would leave no memory of the problematic Fifth Dimension.
Man-eating desks and all sorts of daft things, really. That's all part of our development as a company. We came from the world of puppets and magic, where the unexpected has to happen. It all has to be original, new, crackpot, really. It's a wacky sort of world. But now it's also a very serious world. This is about heavyweight engineering. This is extremely sophisticated expensive piece of work.
An Egyptian theme was chosen and the storyline started to come together, of a corrupt tour guide taking guests on a tour of a tomb that would turn out to be cursed and full of traps. While the tour guide Abdab would be on the quest for the treasure that lay within the tomb's walls, using the unwilling guests as bait so he could steal the jewels and gain fortune. Now, before we go much further, we are aware this storyline is quite layered for a dark ride, especially after the slight disaster that was the Fifth Dimension. However, because of the nature and the overall theme of the ride, even if you knew nothing about the backstory, which most people won't, you can still have a good ride experience, just on a tour through a cursed tomb. The characters had name, personas, and would reappear to present some dialogue throughout the ride experience.
What's happening? Oh, there, what's this? A secret passage. I think I'm onto something.
The main character Abdab, who was the disloyal tour guide, had the most appearances throughout the ride.
You've gone too far now, stupid fools. I warned you. You had your last chance.
This gave more layers to the aforementioned storyline, and even though we as enthusiasts know his name well, the public didn't have to. The generalisation of the later story would help the guest experience much more. The ride experience itself would see guests enter the ride through a heavily themed facade, weaving through an elaborate queue line. It is this point that guests would get their first meeting with Abdab. Well, kind of. In the queue line there is a metal gate with a sleeping Abdab behind it. Continuing on towards the ride, you would pass several shelves, tables and display cabinets with various types of theming, like pots, pans, cutlery, luggage cases and so on. This really added to the immersion of the ride and was one of the most heavily themed queue lines in the UK, and still probably is. Once you passed Abdab and the scenery pieces, you would enter the station, which was seemingly being held up by scaffolding. Guests would then board Egyptian themed cars with 4 cars per train. After leaving the station, you would first enter through a dark doorway into the tomb itself and start ascending up. The ride was over 2 floors, and also worth mentioning, the layout was exactly the same as the Fifth Dimension. Once the ride vehicles had travelled to the 2nd floor dodging various booby traps along the way, you enter the ride's first big scene. This scene sees Abdab holding a rope next to a fountain of snakes. This is the first notice that Abdab isn't quite the tour guide that everyone had expected. Abdab would start talking about how the emerald is his, and if this didn't stop you,
They'll get you in there. They'll get you all right. What are you doing here? Get out. It's closed. Shut. Get it? No more stupid tourists in this tomb.
So it becomes clear that this is a cat and mouse game between Abdab and the guest. In this scene too, all the ride vehicles would turn and face the centre so everyone gets the best view of the scene. This effect was nothing particularly new for a dark ride. Fifth Dimension used a rotating ride vehicles that went on to be inside Terror Tomb, and of course Disney had done it on both Haunted Mansions in America. It was, however, quite a rare thing to find in the UK, and even more unique over here were the ride vehicles stopping in each scene to allow the story to be told properly. As the guests progressed through the scenes, there were various effects involving skeletons, mummies and other ancient Egyptian spookiness. And of course Abdab. This continued all the way through the ride experience until the very end scene, in which there would be a mummy band that would play a heavy rock song and dance while they seemingly capture and sacrifice Abdab in some sort of weird resolution to the story. After opening, complaints once again would roll in regarding the storyline being too hard to follow, leaving some guests confused and feeling lost with the whole experience once again. Shortly after initial opening, the storyline and script was adjusted to make the story easier to follow overall. The ride would operate in the park over several seasons, entertaining millions of guests with little to no changes. This, however, would change in the year 2000, with the name of the ride being changed to a much less scary and threatening Forbidden Tomb. This seemed to be the last hurrah for the original Tomb ride, as everything would change the following season. I spent a while trying to find any photos or videos of it during this time with the Forbidden Tomb guys, but had no luck whatsoever. Over the winter close season between 2000 and 2001, the ride would undergo yet another name change and re-theme, just 12 months after being renamed to Forbidden Tomb, but this time the name wasn't the only thing that would be changed. In a bid to bring the ride up to date with the latest in ride technology, Chessington installed a blaster system to the ride, adding targets throughout the ride. Also, there will be large changes to the scenes within the ride. Some scenes like the Jackal scene would remain pretty much the same, and others like the Rock and Roll Sacrifice finale would be completely removed and redone to fit with a new theme and name, which was Tomb Blaster. However, the biggest change to be made to the ride was the departure of the corrupt tour guide Abdad,
What's happening? What's this?
who had been misleading guests through Chessington's tombs for nearly 8 years. The new experience featured no characters as such, just large scenes, making it seem like the guests were merely exploring a cursed tomb and shooting anything they come across, including walls? Yeah, we don't get that either. At the time, I'm sure this made financial sense, and would have seemed like the way to go to keep the ride as modern as possible, but keeping costs down to a minimum. However, the dark ride purist in me cannot help but think how much the targets are distracting the guests from the pretty large sets and scenes that had hundreds, if not thousands of hours spent handcrafting and building. Obviously, as time passed, Terror Tomb won't be the only Merlin ride to receive the blaster treatment, with the Haunted House at Alton Towers receiving the same changes for the 2003 season, morphing into Jewel. For me, the only silver lining to this story is that Chessington have kept most of the sets, even if they are now covered in UV paint, and also the gorgeously themed queue line. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, please leave a comment of any rides you'd like to see in this series. This has been the history of Terror Tomb at Chessington World of Adventures.